After all these years, to be going back to where it all started. Back to the Matrix.
What happened after Matrix 3, Death of Morpheus, Trinity's return? The sci-fi fans were bowled over by the complex and layered stories of the Matrix trilogy. It was an unthinkable concept back in the day, and the hidden symbolism and open-ended nature of the movies kept things interesting for the fans.
I know it does. I've seen it. That's why the rest of me is just going to enjoy.
The last movie, in particular, has one of the most controversial endings that are the topic of endless discussions and debates. The general outline of the Matrix storyline is as follows. Neo finds out that his reality is simply a simulation controlled by a species that is engaged in a war with humanity over absolute control. Neo is the destined savior of humanity, and he can tamper with the internal coding of the Matrix to suit his purposes. The third movie in the trilogy, The Matrix Revolutions, has been the talking point of the franchise, and the speculations are at an all-time high with the new Matrix movie coming up shortly.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
In the third movie, we saw Neo sacrifice himself because he wanted to save the Matrix one last time, and this was the only way to defeat Agent Smith. It is done. However, the interpretations of the sacrifice varied from one another, and the mind-bending plot got even more complex. Now, we have the Matrix Resurrections, all set to release. And this movie is about to bring the revival of two of the iconic characters, Neo and Trinity. There are a lot of theories surrounding their return, and discussions range from it all being a simulation, to some suggesting that their return is actually real. We will only know the real answer once the movie releases, but till then, there was a lot to explore regarding the events following Matrix 3. The story was continued with the Matrix game, and we get to know more about stuff like Neo's fate, and the continued war between Zion and the machines. In this video, we will explore all of that and more, as we try to decode the puzzles behind the Matrix story. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Matrix Online, taking the story ahead with some new characters.
You know we must return! The world is ours, if only we submit to a higher authority!
Cryptos. The Matrix Online was the famous multiplayer online RPG that took the story ahead. One of the characters introduced here was Kryptos. He was a Zionite captain, and he was an extremist who wanted to use virtual nukes to destroy the Matrix. He went missing after the war, and it was widely believed that he turned into a cipherite. Later, it was discovered that he was under the control of the machines, and this new information brought some tension between Zion and the machines, because it was a violation of the truce formed by Neo.
Exactly. Not every bee is content to make honey for the queen.
So why are you here?
We have common interests.
The General. He was the lead sentinel who was involved in an assault on Zion after the Machine War. The sacrifice of Neo brought about a truce, and the mission of the General was to restart the war by some means between Zion and the machines. He had quite a few ideas to do that, but eventually he became a tool of the MEROVINGIAN and the military leader of his forces. Red-eyed agents. These were cleverly disguised by the General to look like agents, but they were imposters. They started to sabotage the truce agreement, and all the major organizations like Zion, the machines, and the MEROVINGIAN denied being responsible for these. Ultimately, it was found that these were simply a disguised technology developed to implicate the machines for their actions. What happened to Neo? Neo is possibly the single most important character in the franchise, and he was prophesied to be the savior of humanity, the one who would free humanity from the Matrix and end the machine war. It is clear that Neo sacrificed himself for the Matrix revolutions. However, the Matrix Online had something more to add to this simple fate. We see his avatar live on through the game, and this brings some crucial possibilities. One of them could be that Neo had enough foresight to realize that the world would need his services once again in the future. Thus, he split fragments of himself inside the Matrix, and he planned for these to be used to maintain the peace created by his efforts. The game version also confirms that his body was never returned by the machines, and they continued to voice their innocence in this matter. This certainly allows a possible comeback for Neo in the new Matrix movie, and going by the story, this shouldn't seem like such a shock.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Morpheus gone rogue. Morpheus is another protagonist in the Matrix franchise, and he is a Zion operative serving in the city's defense force against the attack by the machines. He devotes his entire life to find the man prophesied to end the machine war, and he has a personality that commands respect. The game version, however, added a twist to this character. When the machines couldn't return Neo's body, Morpheus is enraged. His rage over the missing body of his friend makes him go on a personal terrorist campaign. In this rogue state, he plants bombs that forces people who are still plugged into the Matrix to see the reality of their world. He continued to believe that the machines were keeping Neo's corpse, and these guerrilla attacks were a mark of his protests. However, such drastic measures made him a wanted man who was hunted down by the humans, machines, and exiles alike. Eventually, the General creates a digital fabrication of Morpheus, and this brings some awareness into the program. This is where the possibility of an alternate version of Morpheus being created is always lurking around the corner. The opposed cults that formed after Neo's death. We have already spoken about Neo's sacrifice, and his death resulted in the formation of two opposed cult-like groups, the EPN, or the E Pluribus Neo, and the Cypherites. The first group was led by Kid, and a Matrix sequel comic even suggests that he was trained under Morpheus. This group wants to allow everyone the freedom to exit the Matrix if they choose to do so. However, a subsection of this group wanted to ensure that everyone should be free, irrespective of their choices. The other group followed Cypher's principle that ignorance is bliss. Thus, the Cypherites seek to remain in the virtual world and prefer subservience to the machines. It is later learned that this group is actually led by a machine-built program that is disguised as a human named Kryptos. An extremist faction within this group wants to forcibly reinsert those who have been freed from the Matrix.
Handle us. You'll handle us. You know your predecessors had much more respect.
The MEROVINGIAN, the surprise package. When we first got our hands on the Matrix Online game, we did not expect the surprise villain. It was not the Cypherites, or the General, or the machines. The real villain was the MEROVINGIAN, the chief of the digital underworld. He survives the attempts made by the Vamps and the Lupins, and he even brings the General under his command. His ultimate goal is to get rid of the Oracle and consolidate his influence within the Matrix. We never get to know for sure who killed Morpheus, but there is a good chance that the MEROVINGIAN was behind the murder. The mystery killer used corrupted exiles to destabilize the Matrix, and this points fingers towards the MEROVINGIAN. He even got close to assassinating the Oracle as well, but Kid ruined his plans. Zion versus the machines. According to the lore established by the game, the events of the movies were followed by an era of peace. Both sides tried to maintain the decorum, but the process was doomed to fail sooner or later. The machines also had a friendlier agent who was to act as a liaison between the two warring parties. The efforts were there, but they were certain to fail eventually. There were a few events that fueled the distrust and hostility between the groups. The Cypherite leader was a big incentive, and Neo's missing body created quite some trouble. Finally, the machines found out that Zion was preparing for another war, and this was the final nail in the coffin. The peace could last only 7 years, and anticipating the obvious, the humans tried to prepare for another settlement away from the machines and stocked up on EMP weapons. The terms of the peace treaty were officially violated, and the second war was imminent.
No more red pills. It's time to clean house. Just us and the wind.
The curious case of ANOMEíS UNLIMIT group. The general was about to give Zion a machine upgrade for their joint operation. ANOME went rogue and stole the upgrade, and this halted the joint operation planned against the MEROVINGIAN. This actually sparked an unlikely alliance between the MEROVINGIAN and Zion, and ANOME went on to form the group UNLIMIT. They used their powers to enable themselves with special abilities, and the way to identify them was their green eyes. ANOME quickly became an enemy to everyone, and finally, the agents killed him.
You don't know me, no?
Matrix Resurrections. What does Morpheus's absence imply? Now that Lana Wachowski is back with the new Matrix movie, the trailer has already sparked interest in the fans of the franchise. We get to see Keanu Reeves take up the role where he left off, and while he is back as Neo, the likes of Jada Pinkett Smith and Carrie Ann Moss are also back in action. However, Morpheus is nowhere to be seen, and this has caused speculations regarding his role. In the game, he was shown to go rogue, and then a surprise attack by a mysterious assassin saw him riddled with bullets. But does that imply that he is permanently gone? If the Matrix theorists are to be believed, there are plenty of chances for Morpheus to reappear. Do you remember the emergency jack-out upgrade for the red pills? This could bypass the permadeath inside the Matrix, and this means that Morpheus could still be out there. Yes, the bullets used to kill him had a particular code to nullify the effects of the upgrade, but this character is simply too dynamic to end. We do know that the new movie will have Morpheus in some form because Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is officially credited as the one playing the role. It is possible that we will see a new Morpheus who is not related to the old one. As of now, it remains to be seen whether the director chooses to take a different route or go along the tried and tested path regarding this character.
You want to make a deal? How about this? You give me Neo, or we all die.
How Neo and Trinity return in the new movie. With all the hype around the new Matrix movie, the fans are expecting nothing less than the engaging man versus machine theme that brought the franchise to life back in the day. Those who watched the Matrix trilogy will know that both Trinity and Neo died at the end of the Matrix Revolutions. However, it is clear that the characters have been brought back in the Matrix Resurrections. If sources are to be believed, Neo uploaded their brains before dying because he wanted to have a backup in case something went wrong later. So, Neo continued to exist all this while as ones and zeros around the digital world. There are some other ways of bringing Neo back into the story. He could be revived by the Oracle or simply be time traveling from the past. But clearly, him being alive as a digital entity is much more realistic. This is also in sync with the religious arc of the storyline. Neo is more of an allegory of Jesus Christ. And just like the Son of God, Neo saved humanity. If the religious side of the franchise is considered, the Son of God is supposed to descend from heaven for a second coming. And the Matrix metaphor would be complete, with Neo returning to avert a crisis once again. Thus, it would be natural to see an older version of them stuck in the Matrix. If that isn't convenient for the plot, we don't know what is. The only tricky part would be Trinity having to accept her boyfriend as a piece of code.
Time to fly.
Our final words. We are stoked for the sequel because it has been a rather long wait. The franchise had a considerable following for its wacky storytelling, and the fans expect nothing short of that in this comeback. Neo's return has already surprised the fans enough, and now it is only a matter of time before we know all about the mysteries surrounding the narrative. Only a few days remain before we can choose between the red pill and the blue pill again. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.